Welcome to the Long Range Pursuit Podcast, presented by Gunworks, where we learn about and share long-range shooting techniques, science, and gear.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Long Range Pursuit Podcast. This is an Instructor's Corner episode. Again, with I'm an instructor, Ian Miner, and then our training director and instructor, Brian Poor. Today, we're going to be talking about basically debriefing the antelope hunt that Brian just went on down in our class down in New Mexico at the Whittington Center. And some of the range finding techniques and some things he found down there, and how to properly use a rangefinder and be not just properly use it, but to be good at using a rangefinder. But first, let's kind of just get into the antelope hunt or the Whittington Center in general, and kind of the experience that people may have going down to take our class and then shoot an animal.
Yeah, this event predates both of us. It's one of Gunworks kind of long-range university's longest-running events. And what I like about it is I kind of look at it as it's a really great event for a beginner hunter, because you basically, you learn how to shoot in days 1 through 3, and on days 4 and 5, you actually get to go out and you get to shoot something. So it's a great event for them, but it's also a great event for a more experienced hunter too. There's some trophies down there. You got to be a little pickier than the beginner hunter might be, but there's some half decent antelope down there if you're willing to pass on a few and not shoot the first one you see.
Yeah, which is hard to do.
Yeah, which it seems like it's hard for everybody to do, because I had a couple clients this year, and the guy's like, yeah, it's a mature buck, and I'm looking at him going like, nah, that's not a very big buck, and they're like, I don't care, I'm going to shoot it.
Yeah, it's time to put what we practice to work.
Yeah. And then we did have one guy though, and he was like, I've never shot an antelope before, but I wanted to be a decent one. And anytime you make those decisions and you pass on stuff, you can just see it in their body language and stuff. As we got towards the end of that second day, and he'd passed on a couple, and you could just see it in his body language where he's just starting to question. It's like, oh man, I probably should have shot that last one. We're getting to the end here. Yeah. And it was perfect because, with probably like an hour left, we found a big one on the last day, and he just completely put a perfect shot on it. And, so it was that perfect ending where it paid, to hold out looking for a bigger one.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, what about like housing and what they're going to experience training before they go hunting?
So we offer basically 2 different packages there. And so there's 3 seasons on private land in New Mexico. One season is the end of August, actually almost mid-August, kind of early, but you are the first people on the ranch, the first people that have dibs on the antelope, but they're not rutting yet, so sometimes the bucks are a little bit hard to find. We use that one as kind of like our beginner, where we run level 1, level 2, and then roll that into an antelope hunt. And then we do 2 additional events, and that's the end of September and October, and that's the ones you'll be at.
Mm-hmm.
And that's during the rut, which can be pretty challenging because, like, those goats won't stand still for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
They'll be at 1,000 yards, then they're at 300 yards. Then they're 1,500 yards in the opposite direction chasing a doe, and the next thing you know, they're coming back.
Yeah.
So can be pretty exciting. And for those classes, I kind of view those as being more of maybe a little bit more advanced, a little bit more of a trophy hunting class. We do our 2-day field marksmanship course. So it's literally, if you've been to level 1, level 2 before, if you've been to level 1 and level 2 before, then you're getting something different that you haven't done before. And if you've never been to one of our classes, then you're still going to get some really good marksmanship training, but we just don't really focus too much on shooting really long range in those courses.
What do you mean by marksmanship training? Like tripod stuff, right? Is one of the things.
It's a lot of tripod work, and it's a lot of like troubleshooting your marksmanship technique. Like, a lot of people have these ingrained bad habits, that without somebody to point them out to you and really run a bunch of drills that focus on kind of ironing those out of your technique.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of repetition doing it correctly to kind of unlearn that bad habit. And in level 1, level 2, they're a bit more of a long range ballistics course. So we teach marksmanship, but we don't spend a lot of time troubleshooting it. And that field marksmanship course, we really spend a lot of time troubleshooting your technique.
Yeah.
So in my mind, it's kind of a different course. There's a benefit for everybody in that course. And that's what we run in, these next 2 events that are coming up in end of September and first week of October.
Yeah.
We'll do the field marksmanship course ahead of them. That's a 2-day training course.
Yeah, and I love both events, but that first one, is just great because it's getting you back into, let's get into the role, getting ready for hunting again.
Yeah.
And so you kind of go down there. To me, it's like, hey, let's get this crash course with a couple buddies, because that's we're usually, I mean, there are 14 people in those classes sometimes, and you just have a fun time at the Whittington Center, which is gorgeous, and you're staying in nice cabins.
Yep.
And you just get a crash course, and even if you've been to our level 1, level 2,
I wouldn't describe it as a crash course, so I mean, because it's 3 days.
Yeah.
So
condensed.
It's condensed, but it's the same number of hours that you do if you did level 1, level 2 here in Cody.
Sure.
We just run basically 8-hour days instead of 6-hour days.
Yep.
And so we cover, I'd say, 95% of the same material.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
In that condensed course.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's just great because even if you've been to our level 1, level 2, even our 4-day one in Cody, it's a great refresher right before the hunt. I love our events or experiences where we do a class followed by a hunt, because it's immediate putting it to work versus coming to our class and then you got a hunt coming up in 6 months. If you're not using it, you're losing it, type of thing. So
and I look at whether it's antelope hunting, whether it's shooting cow elk, whether it's shooting white-tailed does, that's like a continuation of your training. Because the way you get better at killing stuff in the field is by killing stuff in the field. And just because you've shot a bunch of white-tailed does doesn't mean you're not suddenly going to get a bad case of buck fever when you see a big, huge bull or that sheep of a lifetime. But you're much more likely to be successful, in my mind, if you've successfully shot and killed a few animals when you get that really once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I also love our sheep mountain course, because some of these positions, that you're getting from hunts or from going to courses are things you haven't built before. Guys, it's very surprising, really, the amount of guys that come to Sheep Mountain and have never shot from a tripod. Or they have, but it's like this quick setup that the guide threw up for them real quick, and they don't know how to support the rear end of the rifle or what. So just to be put in a position that you haven't faced before, or that you haven't been hurried to put in this position before, boom, now you've got the experience, and you stack on these experiences, and boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Now when it comes time to get that big animal, the dream animal or whatever, you've done it multiple times.
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess the next thing is like the terrain out there, because we want to talk about the Rangefinder and some experiences you had with the Rangefinder, but what, the terrain kind of leads into that. What are we hunting down there? It's not high sagebrush mountain type stuff, like some of the antelope out here in Wyoming.
No, this is flat grassland. I mean, it is flat. When I say flat, I'm talking like pancake flat in a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
And it's you can probably drive up to about 12 to 1,500 yards from these antelope, and once they start getting a little spooky, but you have to be behind a little crest or with some cover, because once they see a vehicle, they're probably out.
Mm-hmm.
And we use cow decoys a lot, and so you're basically walking behind a cow decoy to close that range down. But that flat terrain really presents a lot of challenges when you're trying to get a good range on something, and because it's so easy to get a range on the grass 30 yards behind, the grass 40 yards behind, the grass 50 yards behind, or the grass 20 yards in front or 30 yards in front, and not actually get a range on that antelope.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's just from doing it for a few years, I've kind of gotten better and better at it. The first year I went down there, I had a terrible time getting ranges until I really learned how to, get ranges in that type of terrain.
So what are you doing to make sure you are, or to be confident in the range that you're getting, knowing it's the animal and not the grass? What are you doing differently?
Yeah, so I think before you even go hunting, one of the most important things is you have to know in your particular laser rangefinder exactly where that laser beam is in relationship to the reticle. Because for example, in my personal set of BR10s, it's got that reticle in there, but from experience, I know that the laser beam is actually in the bottom third. So I use the bottom third of the reticle as the pinpoint or as my crosshair where I know that beam is, and so, the way that you find that out, before you go hunting is use like a street sign or something like that, and set that device up on a tripod so it's super steady, and then put the reticle off to one side, blaze, you should get a distance on whatever terrain's behind the sign, and then just slowly move that reticle towards the sign, until you're getting a distance on the sign and not the terrain behind it. and you kind of learn where, basically, if I started from the right, I learn where the left edge of the reticle is. Then I go to the right side of the sign. I do the same thing working, from the other side of the sign. I learn where the other side of the reticle is. And then you go above the sign and you range over the top, over the top, over the top, and then note where on the reticle you are when you first get the range to that sign as opposed to the range to the terrain that's behind it. And that's really important because oftentimes we're trying to get a range on their back. So you're ranging behind, and then getting a range on their back. And so once I know where that reticle is, in my laser rangefinder, I think the second most important thing is you got to be steady. Like, run that thing on a tripod. Like, this whole, with basically 4 different hunters, I was running the binos, our BR10 binos, on a tripod. And that's the only way you really get stable enough, to know for sure you're getting a range. So say, for example, if I'm ranging an antelope, I'll start over the top of them. And I'll talk about targeting modes in a minute here, but I'll start ranging over the top of them, and so I'm getting a range on whatever's behind them. And then I'll come down, I'll lower that reticle, let's say 6 inches, and I'll range again, and I get something similar. And all of a sudden, when I hit their back, I see the range jump closer. Say I was getting, 650, and all of a sudden I'm getting 625. And then I get 625 again, I get 625 again. And then I range what I believe is closer to me, and I'm getting 580.
So you're talking a bracketing technique.
Yeah, you really do a lot of bracketing. And then the one thing I've seen too is that when you're getting a range on grass, that range will vary a little bit. Like one time you'll get, say, 580, then you get 585, then you get 581, and that's kind of like the grass in front of them. But when you're actually getting a range on the animal, assuming that they're standing still, I'll get that 620.8. And then 620.8 again.
Sure.
Then 620.8 again
because it's a solid.
Because I'm hitting that flat surface out there, as opposed to just that sloping away from you, the depth of that grass or that terrain.
Yeah.
So that's the range I trust.
Yeah.
Is when I get that exact same range several times in a row, and in my mind I already know how far it is to the terrain behind them, and I know how far it is to the terrain in front of them. When I get that middle range and I get that same reading a couple times in a row, then I'm confident that, okay, that is the correct range.
And that, again, I just want to stress again the first part that you brought up, which is finding the reticle.
Yeah.
Or the beam in relation to the reticle.
Yeah.
Because I think people hear that and be like, wait, what are you talking about? Okay, we talked about it real quick, but it takes a second to register, I think, because guys just think their beam is lined up with wherever the crosshair is.
Yeah.
And hopefully it is, right? But the beam may not be the exact size of the reticle displayed.
And it may not be exactly centered in the reticle.
And so you have to check that.
Yeah.
That one of our slides in Long Range University is talking about an offset of that reticle, and that you have to check it. Otherwise, you're hitting a rock 50 yards in front of the animal just because it's slight low left or something like that, right? Yep. But it's not something that you can calibrate yourself and zero it in like a rifle and a scope. It's something that you need to learn it, and then if it is offset from the reticle itself, not just not the size of the reticle, but say it is below the reticle or right of the reticle, then that's something you would send in and get recalibrated. Right? Yeah,
and they're essentially zeroed at the factory, but rough handling can draw that zero loose. So anytime your laser rangefinder takes a tumble down the mountain or something like that, you should probably, find a tree trunk or something that you can do this same test on to make sure that there hasn't been a shift that's occurred inside there. Because through rough handling, that zero can basically get dislodged, just like you could lose your zero on a rifle through rough handling.
Yeah, and it's crazy because you can depend on how many rangefinders you have now too, right? You got your bow rangefinder, you got the old rangefinder you bust out sometimes, and then you got, the fancy one that has ballistics in it or whatever. You need to learn these. And then to me, I took a Sharpie and I wrote an offset on an old rangefinder I had because I knew.
Remember?
Yeah, because when I switched over to the BR4, that since we got them working here, I forgot what my offset was on my old one. And I was lasing something at 800 yards and it kept giving me 1,200, and I knew it wasn't that far because we were setting up targets. And then I was like, man, I think I wrote this down, looked on it, there was my Sharpie mark of the offset, and then I used my offset and lased and found that was setting up for the NRL competition actually. But just I can't stress that enough. I have missed 2 animals because of an offset back. I don't know. It was before I worked at Gunworks, but I always say that's my story and I'm sticking to it. That's why I missed them. But really, when I saw that slide, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to check these, and found that it's a pretty common thing, really, to have some sort of offset. Maybe it's not outside the reticle, but that it's not perfectly centered in that exact reticle. Yeah.
And then, the other thing too, I think, is your targeting modes, and that's completely conditions based. But generally speaking, like working that really flat terrain with Antelope, I tend to run them in the near mode. And for those that don't know, a good quality rangefinder, obviously ours, are going to have some different targeting modes, and we call them near, far, long range near, and long range far. Personally, I kind of wish they were named like first and last, because that's a better understanding of what it's really doing. So when we say near, we're not talking about how near or far the target is. It's not like, okay, we use this to 500 yards and we use the far past 500 yards.
Yeah.
What it's talking about is we're telling that laser in near mode that I want you to give me a range to the first significant amount of reflected light that comes back to the rangefinder. If we're in far mode, we're telling that laser rangefinder, hey, it's like, I want you to ignore some of that first light that comes back, and then some of the last light that comes back, a significant amount of light that comes back all at the same instant, but the last light, it's that far target that we're looking for. So it has nothing to do with the range of the target. It's simply telling the laser what light to ignore and what light we want. So for example, if I'm trying to range something in a rainstorm, I want to be in far mode, because I'm telling the laser rangefinder it's going to get a whole bunch of reflected light back off raindrops kind of continuously throughout that. But that last significant amount of light that all comes back at the same time, the last, meaning the furthest, that's what I want the range to. But if I was trying to use that same far setting on an antelope at 800 yards out in the grass, that beam is way bigger than the body of that antelope by the time it gets out there. It's not a laser beam. It's, think more like a flashlight, and so, maybe 30% of the light actually hits him and 70% of the light reflects off the backdrop. Well, if you're in far mode, it's going to give you the further 70% all the time, and it's never going to give you a range on him, which is just that 30% of the beam that's hitting him. So if I'm in near mode, I'm telling the laser rangefinder, hey, the first light that comes back, that's what I want the range to. And that works really good, on that flat country doing antelope hunting.
So what would you say, and maybe it's animal dependent or terrain dependent, what is your go-to default setting in range modes?
If I'm out in that flat country, it's definitely near.
Yeah.
But if I'm, doing kind of my typical mountain hunting and stuff like that, I tend to work in far mode, just because, it's pretty rare that you have, you're dealing with solid hillsides and facing hillsides and the other side of the valley, so even if you're not getting a reading on the animal, you're getting a reading on the ground 5 feet behind him.
Yeah.
So I tend to use far mode in the mountains, and what that does is that lets me laze through a little bit of fog, a little bit of rain, a little bit of snow. I also tend to use, I know this is a long range hunting show, but I tend to use far mode bow hunting, because it seems like you're almost always like peaking a ridge where you're trying to get that beam to go past a few blades of grass.
Sure.
And get a range on the animal behind that little, because you're using a little bit of cover you're trying to hide behind.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, so you have to know your gear and your way around some little quick buttons and stuff like that. And that's what it takes to be successful, is you have to know your gear.
Oh yeah. It's so critical.
Yeah.
Because I remember, I don't know, it was probably about a year or so ago, we did a video series on like the biggest 5 reasons that people miss shots in the field. And this was kind of like we consulted with our sales guys, and they hear stories from hunters and the stories that we hear and what we see when we're, out at the, just running like scenarios out of Sheep Mountain and stuff like that, and we all agreed that despite that we all have laser rangefinders that will give us an exact range, improper range is still one of the biggest factors that causes misses.
Sure.
And it's because people aren't using them correctly, they're not steady enough, or they're not getting a range to what they think they're getting a range to.
Yeah. Well, okay, so getting steady, like easier said than done. How do you get steady?
Actually, let me back up just a little bit, because I didn't hit the long range modes.
Yeah.
So we got near and far, and then you got long range near and long range far. And those LR modes, really what they are is if you ever take a laser rangefinder out and you say, we know for a fact this laser rangefinder will give me a range out of 2,000 yards, and I'm trying to range something 500 yards out and it just doesn't give me a reading. It's basically because there's no one thing out there that's reflecting enough light back that it's getting light back at all different times. And it's basically the laser telling you, is like, hey, I'm confused. I don't know what you want me to give you a range to, therefore I'm just giving you no range at all.
I've got too many options to
I got too many options. There's 4 different objects out there that it could be.
Yeah.
But, there's a threshold programmed into them where a certain amount of light has to come back all at the same instant, for it to trigger the response and give you a range to it. And so what the long range modes do is instead of just sending out one, beam of light, is it starts pulsing beams of light. And then as each one returns, the computer in there remembers the profile from the previous one and then stacks the next beam of light on top of that. And so what you can do is you can break that threshold that it takes to trigger a range, because after a couple pulses of light where it remembers each previous pulse, then the lasers go, okay, now I have enough to break that programmed in threshold of how much light it needs to get back to actually give you a range.
Sure.
And so I personally don't use it unless I find I can't get a range.
Sure.
But if you're trying to get a range, and for example, would be like if I'm trying to get a range on something small, like say maybe a coyote or something, that's just out there in some pretty flat ground with some rocks and stuff. There's no one object out there that's bigger than anything else, including him. Is that long range mode might work.
Yeah, I remember the first when we were shooting the I think it was the BLR 10Bs, but I remember thinking, why is it not giving me a read back immediately? Like, I love our BR4 because it's just boom, boom, right back. Yeah. I was like, why is this? And then that's what was explained to me was, you are in long range mode, aren't you? And I was like, yeah. And it is taking time. It's sending multiple pulses. It takes a little bit longer for it to gather that data and give it back. It's
literally like a one button push takes like 5 seconds for it to finish, I think.
When you're in that long.
I think it's a 5 second time span.
Yeah, it's just that little bit longer because it's getting more information. Yeah. Okay.
And that kind of leads into what you were bringing up there, is that especially in that long range mode, I think you got to be on a tripod. Like, you got to be so steady, because that means that during those 5 seconds, we can't have any movement. So it's basically that beam, every beam is hitting exactly the same place during that 5 second duration, as opposed to, you probably get away with it a little bit more handheld if you're just in near or far, where it's just sending out one beam of light.
Yeah. And I know, a tripod, I shouldn't say you should be carrying one, but most guys are carrying one with their spotting scope or to shoot off of, or both.
Yeah.
And then, glassing off of if you can with your binos. And that's where our little bino stud mount comes into play.
Yeah.
I've never wanted to use one because it's just another piece of gear.
Yeah.
I haven't yet. Now that I've seen enough students go through using it and how they range much better, and then I've gotten behind it, especially at sheet mountain, and been like, oh my gosh, we're getting ranges like that. My question is, does it fit in your bino harness? Like, where do you put that stud mount, and how do you work your way around that piece of gear?
Yeah, so myself personally, you just have to carry it separately, unfortunately.
Just put it in a little side pouch or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because it doesn't fit and so basically I just end up, I can't close my bino harness well with it on, but I can kind of get them in there.
Sure.
So sometimes they'll go on the tripod, come off the tripod, go on the tripod, come off the tripod.
Yeah.
And it's still attached.
And I'm guessing a lot of guys are just leaving it on the tripod anyway, locked in, that stud mount.
Yeah, you could do it that way.
Yeah, I've seen some guys do that. But
but usually when I take it off the tripod, it's because I'm switching to a spot and scope or...
Yeah. Did you use that down in New Mexico?
Yeah, I pretty much used my binos on the tripod on every stock we did down there.
With the mount piece?
Yeah, with the mount piece, and that's really what, it's just, I was so successful at getting good ranges, that I was like, wow, and then the other thing is it works well too, is like when you're working that rolling country, you're trying to basically, oftentimes you're going after a bedded buck, so you're just peeking the top of a rise that's 50 yards in front of you, and you're basically, kind of burning through that grass with the binos looking for his horns, and you go another 10 feet up and you glass that horizon line again looking for the top of his horns, and then once you get to where you find him, you get just up enough that you can get a range on him, and then you just end up sitting there and waiting for him to stand up.
Sure.
Knowing that once he stands up that he's going to be fully in view. But right now, all you can see is just his horns, and that's actually horns and head. And that's actually a case where I switched to the far mode because I got to burn through that little bit of grass that's out 50 yards in front of me. Not get it. If I'm getting that 50-yard range, then I switch to far mode. Then I can actually get a range on him. Whatever I can see of him as opposed to that grass that's in front of me.
Yeah, and that's just a push of a button on the BLR-10Bs, right?
Yeah, really just a push of the button
to change modes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's to know your gear and to just know your way around it real quick. That's a real quick deal, and you're not changing through a bunch of menus and stuff, right? Yeah. That's awesome.
It was simple, and I was just like, okay, I felt like it's like, okay, I have found my antelope hunting style and system. This works really well.
Sure. So are you bringing your spot and scope then, or it's in your pack because you're glassing to see if it's something worth moving on, and then you throw it in the pack for your stock, or what are you doing?
Yeah, either in the pack or it just gets left in the truck because once you bust it out to assess, hey, is this a big enough antelope to go after?
Yeah.
I don't need the spot and scope anymore.
That's so tough.
I'm just running binos.
Yeah. For me, I try and tape everything. I try and video everything. So with the spot and scope. So that just means I need to hit up Olin and get the adapter for the binos.
Yeah, there you go.
Another $100.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, how about, you talked about bracketing a little bit. You talked about lasing the top of the animal's back, which is kind of combined with that bracketing. And then my favorite is to laze their feet if possible. And that type of terrain, really hard to do.
Yeah.
But to me, it's, your beam may be bleeding past that animal and hitting objects behind it or whatever, depending on what mode you're on. But no matter the mode I'm on, if I have the opportunity to laze the feet, I'll laze the feet.
Yeah. That's kind of my go-to in the mountains.
Yeah.
Or any kind of rolling country where, you can actually see the feet of the animal. Because it's like, if I try to laze their back, there's a potential that you're really getting a range 20 or 30 yards behind them. But if you laze their feet, and really what you're doing is you're lazing the ground their feet are standing on.
Yeah.
Then you're getting a range to them.
Right.
I'll still do the same bracketing. I'll purposely laze over the top of them so I know what the backdrop is. Then I'll purposely laze the bush in front of them so I know what the range to that is.
Yep.
And then I try to laze their feet and like, okay, what's that middle range? And once I get that same number a couple times in a row, then I'm comfortable. It's like, okay, that's really the range, and I think the key is like, I don't think I've ever shot at something that I'll bet I didn't push that button on that laser rangefinder at least 10 times.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, it's like I have to get multiple readings before I'm really comfortable that I got that range correct.
Half the time you're getting multiple readings because you're just getting the range, then you're confident in the range and you forgot to look at what the dope was on the gun, yeah.
or what the BDC adjusted range was.
Yeah. One of the things I wrote on here, because I just think there's some fun stories down in New Mexico, and all of our, the elk hunts we do, the aoudad hunts we do, but basically I was asking, or what is your favorite experience or favorite hunt that you've been on in one of our experiences?
Yeah, there's a couple that come to mind. As far as like my personal hunting style, what I like, I think one of my favorite ones is, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. And it was just, you get a lot of thunderstorms down there. So we had this afternoon a thunderstorm blew through. So it was just kind of cold, a little wet. And we literally low crawled within like 500 yards of this herd of antelope that's bedded. And just because of, that kind of the Marine mentality, embrace the suck.
Yeah.
And as long as somebody's more miserable than me, then I'm happy.
Yeah.
I could just tell that everybody with us was more miserable than me because we were laying out in the rain for like an hour waiting for this goat to stand up at like 550 yards.
In the prone, he's bipod set up, everything.
Yeah, we were just all set up. I can't remember if we were prone. I can't remember if it was bipod or tripod, but we were just set up in the prone, just waiting for him to stand up. And it's raining on us and it's dumping on us and it's kind of blowing. And, of course, I'm just thinking about the wind the whole time. So I always have a wind call in my mind as soon as he stands up.
Mm-hmm.
But, so as far as like, I remember that one because I just, that kind of mental toughness pays off because he got a good goat.
Yeah, good.
And then kind of one of the funny stories is we had a hunter using one of our rental rifles, one of our loaner rifles, because he'd used it in the class. And they had the old Revic PMRs on there, and the first generation.
Mm-hmm.
And that had a locking elevation turret on it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But if you were strong enough, you're excited enough, you could spin it without unlocking it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we had to go to like, I don't know, I think it was like 800 yards or something. It was like first thing in the morning. It's calm out. It's like if you're going to, take a pretty long shot, it was the perfect conditions for it. And I remember I gave him the range, and I watched him spin, 22 minutes on that thing without unlocking the turret, which if you know that scope, you've lost zero.
Yeah.
Instantly lost zero because you basically forced it past the stop.
You monkey gripped it fast. Yeah.
You know, so I grabbed the rifle. I tried to turn it back down without unlocking it, and then we unlocked it and brought it back up.
Yeah.
But he missed by like 15 feet.
Okay.
You know, so we're like, okay, we got to, and that ghost looking at us like, you guys are stupid.
Yeah.
You know,
Do a quick field zero.
Yeah. So we're like, okay, we got to go back and re-zero this. So we actually drove back to the ranch house.
Oh, yeah.
You know, set up a piece of cardboard, got them re-zeroed at 100, you know, and then went back out to look for the same goat. And what was kind of funny about it is now this goat's at like 500 yards and probably saw us, and he's like, those guys can't shoot. I've seen that truck before.
Yeah.
But, oh, yeah. This time he got him.
Heck yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, I've seen that issue sometimes. I love locking turrets, but yeah, you can grip them past if you're excited.
Yeah. He's kind of excited and kind of a big, strong guy, and
Yeah.
he made that thing spin.
Well, because of the terrain down there, my favorite is we had two guys who they couldn't get down the prone. It was just too uncomfortable and back issues or whatever. And so at the range, we were really working tripod.
Yeah.
A lot of sitting stuff, but sitting on the ground was a little rough as well. So I was just like, man, what do we got back here? And I found this bright orange Home Depot 5-gallon bucket, you know, and I just sat it upside down, and they sat on that and shot, and they're shooting really well. And they said, are you going to bring that bucket with? I was like, you darn right I am. And so I carried their rear bags and, you know, some stuff in this bucket. And we hiked around not Winning Center, but the ranch where we go hunting. And both guys from the sitting on tripods used that 5-gallon bucket and both smoked their antelope. And so we were laughing, you know, we got to put a kill count on this bucket. But since then, you know, I bought one of those just easy trifold stools.
No, yeah, those are great
stools
for the guys that can't get prone.
Yeah, we had a guy who was, I think he was 88 or 89, and we would put him on one of those stools and had a tripod up front and a tripod in the rear to help support the rear. And he shot his goat at 600 something. That was such a cool thing. We had him set up at 100. Yeah. It was closer to 75, but just couldn't quite get it right.
Yeah.
Couldn't quite get the height right and whatnot until he was at 600, and then he smashed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'd say down New Mexico, let's say the 20 or so antelope hunts that I've been a part of, I'd say 90% of them were shot from a tripod.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. In fact, you know, you mentioned using that tripod for a rear support.
Yeah.
You know, when you got multiple tripods, you know, most people don't think about this, but we use a tripod leg for the rear support on the rifle, you know, and just, you know, run the tripod. If you can envision running the tripod higher than the stock of the rifle, and then just, you know, grabbing the butt stock on one leg of the tripod and using that for your rear support. You know, that guy was telling you about that, you know, held out for the big goat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when he finally had his chance, I think it was like 525 yards or something like this. And literally we spotted the goats kind of working their way along the backside of the hill. So it was literally like we just laid in wait. You know, but we had to set him up in the standing, otherwise we wouldn't be able to see over the grass. And
so he had a tripod in the front.
Yeah, tripod in the front, and then I snaked another tripod in the back there, you know, and got him that rear support.
Sure.
You know, and you know, when we looked at that shot placement, I mean, I couldn't have walked up and poked that animal with a pencil in a better spot than he hit him.
From the standing.
Yeah, from the standing at 525.
It's insane what two tripods can be so rock solid. And guys will be like, I'm not going to carry two tripods in the field. Well, if you have one and your buddy's glassing as well, he's probably going to have one.
Yep.
You know, so it is a realistic thing, especially antelope hunting. You can carry gear all over the place with you there. But yeah, cool. Well, what are some of the other experiences that we offer? We got the antelope class in New Mexico, Winning Center. It's always an awesome time. A lot of people. So honestly, that makes it fun for me. Like if you want the quaint kind of one-on-one, a little bit smaller group, that's probably not the one. You know, New Mexico is fun. It's a bunch of people. It's kind of a riot. And then when they bust out their own guns, you know, that half of the range day is its own thing, because most guys are bringing Gunworks guns, not everybody, you know, and so sometimes you're trying to figure out gear and stuff. It's a lot of fun, but then we have a little bit smaller stuff too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so we do, in fact, the last couple of days, you know, we've been out scouting this ranch, so we're just starting to run some cow elk hunts, you know, basically meat hunts, you know, here in Cody in November and December this year, you know, and, you know, the only downside on that event is you have to get your tag by June, you know, so we're all locked up for this year, you know, but so this will be the first year of running that specific ranch. And, you know, we've been driving around out there for the last couple of days,
Yeah.
I mean, it is some cool country. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of elk. Obviously, some weather-dependent stuff, but sounds like they've had a lot of success. And we've done that in the past. Like right as I was getting to Gunworks a little over 4 years ago, we were doing the same type of a little bit of a train-up day and then an elk hunt, cow elk hunt. And then it kind of died off, and we're back.
Yeah, we're back. We got a new ranch, and the thing about this is, we schedule them late and maybe cold, but we do that for a reason, is because it's a little bit migration based, and migration is dependent upon the weather. So, running them in December, there's no doubt in my mind there'll be enough snow in the high country that has pushed them down. And when it does, there's hundreds of elk in there. Yeah,
and to me, it's a great opportunity to not only if you just need some meat for the freezer, but if you're just trying to get your feet wet in kind of a Western style hunting, it's like, okay, we're going to be right in kind of the base of the mountains, and it's probably going to be cold. Most likely going to be cold.
A lot of semi-mountainous terrain. It's kind of rolling. Yeah. But it's semi-mountainous. It's kind of the foothills.
And a big game animal that, it should be fun.
And then this year we're running that 2-day field marksmanship course ahead of it. Mm-hmm. To kind of get everybody tuned up on the tripod shooting and marksmanship techniques and stuff. And then, we'll spend like the last half of the second day, working with their rifle. Yeah. So we shoot our rifles for a bit just to, burn up our barrels, not theirs.
Get technique down.
Get the technique down, work on some fundamentals. And then, that last half of the second day, do the same thing with their rifles.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, so it's going to be a good time. So we do that, and then we don't have anything on the board right now, but we'll have it posted here fairly shortly. We still do outdad hunts in Texas, pretty much every year. And those tend to be a max of 6 or 8 hunters, and where we've been hunting down in the Chinati Mountains there,
beautiful.
That's a cool place. It's when you think Texas, you don't think of the Chinati Mountains. I mean, they get up around 7,000 feet. You're kind of up in the high country. And like I think one of the coolest times we were down there a couple of years ago was in March, and we had about 8 or 10 inches of snow on the ground, and we're hunting a North African sheep in South Texas in 8 inches of snow, looking at the Mexican border.
So cool.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
I remember those hunters had an awesome time, and it's work too. I mean, I love it because you're kind of driving around a little bit like antelope hunting, but then when you do see them, it's work because it's that shaly, mountainous
mountain. I mean,
cactus.
you feel like you feel like you're sheep hunting. The only difference is you can get a Jeep up into the mountains. You got to walk from there. Yeah, and you're staying in a nice place at the end of the day.
Yeah, place to warm up, and I love that hunting too because when it's not cold like that, you're usually in maybe a long sleeve or something like that, and it's just a little bit. You're not so much in the elements except for that that couple classes we had. That was and when you Brian takes guys up into the higher stuff and the back stuff because Brian's I'm like okay, I know where they are here and there. Brian's like, we're gonna make this feel like a sheep hunt. We're going up deep.
Yeah, because for me sometimes even if I know there's a few less up there,
it's a great experience.
I know where they're at.
Yeah,
so it's like I just kind of love the experience of going up in the mountains. So whoever ends up coming with me usually gets the mountain experience.
Yeah, maybe a little more hiking.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we've got our Chad Mendes hunting that we hunt with Chad Mendes and his crew.
Yeah, and so this is coming up in I guess so the week before Thanksgiving in November, I believe.
Yep.
And you'd have to look at his website for the exact dates, and actually you'll be out there on this one.
Yeah.
And so Chad Mendes, UFC fame, basically he works with Opal Butte Outfitters in Oregon. And what's good about this event is they're landowner tags, so you don't have to put it in ahead of time. You don't have to draw the tag ahead of time. The landowner has the tags. And I think they still got a couple spots available. And kind of what's unique about it is in each event, he'll have somebody from the UFC field that you're hunting with.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be a superstar, but they're definitely pretty accomplished fighters.
Yeah, somebody from his realm, I guess.
Yeah.
Like his buddies or and what I noticed because I went to it the first year, and Chad is a celebrity, well-known guy. You see him on TV, all this stuff, but then when you meet him, he's just like everybody else. I mean, he's an exceptional human being, right? But he's an awesome, humble guy. He's a hunter, a true hunter, and just a total fun guy to be around. So it made the environment so fun. It wasn't a bunch of people sucking up to Chad Mendes. It was a bunch of hunters to include Chad Mendes.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's shooting Gunworks stuff, and we're just telling awesome stories. And he brought in some elk and was like sharing his elk meat. Like, just awesome guy, awesome venue. I think it's beautiful out there.
Really nice.
Elk everywhere out there too.
Yeah, and it's just pretty awesome. Like that rolling timbered hill country, like kind of, some of it's been forested, some of it hasn't, but it's just like, I mean, it's great elk country.
And it's cow elk. Cow elk is what we're shooting out there
cow
too.
elk, so it's a meat hunt.
Yep.
And when I was there last year, it was Jessica Clark. She's a UFC fighter. I'm not sure if she's in the UFC anymore. I think she fights in a different league now. But definitely just a incredible Muay Thai fighter.
Awesome.
And it was very cool. She's originally from Australia, had never hunted big game before. So of course, I started paying attention to what she does now, and it's pretty cool because you see that transition. Chad got her in on the hunt, and she killed her first elk, and when they're butchering her stuff, she was completely like, how do I do this? Like, she wanted to do everything. Yeah. And I see now, she's made that transition. Like, she's part of like Sheepdog Response now, where she teaches like personal protection to women and stuff. In the same company that teaches a lot of firearm skills and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
She's in both realms now too.
Yeah. She just, it's pretty cool to see her get into the hunting world and then get into that personal defense world, and especially being a girl from Australia.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, but very nice person, cool person. And all the clients were great, and so it's a fun event.
And we see some repeat guys just because they have a blast too. I mean, when I went there for my first year doing it, there were guys who had been there a couple times before. Yeah. So the Chad's his outfit and stuff is Fins and Feathers, spelled with Z's, not S's. Fins and Feathers.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to check on those spots, it's info at Fins and Feathers. That's FINZ and Feathers, FEATHERZ.com.
Yeah.
And that'd be the best way to sign up, because we don't handle signups for that. Chad does.
So we'll put that in, the description or the notes and some of our other experiences that we do, just so you guys can check them out. But the big thing here, guys, is hopefully we see you at some of these events. Not just, it's great training value, and it's a hunt. Like, don't discount it because it's a cow elk hunt or anything either. Like, it's a dang hunt. But that's how you're getting better, and that's how you're preparing yourself for maybe that trophy animal that you're going for. Is you got to pull the trigger a couple times.
Yeah, you got to kill some stuff before you get good at killing stuff.
Yeah. So thanks, guys. Short one, but we just wanted to hit a little recap on New Mexico and talk about the rangefinder a little bit. Hopefully you learned some things. Good luck this hunting season.
Yeah, getting excited. Warming up.
Heck yeah.
Getting warmed up for hunting season. It's getting close. I've been chasing antelope all weekend, with a bow.
Yeah.
No luck yet, but, going to Alaska here in a few days, and then when I come back, it'll be rifle season. So, it's getting going here.
You're probably going to have a stack of animals up in Alaska, so you'll be outnumbered.
Just one really big one.
What moose?
Yeah.
Yeah, heck yeah. Oof, good luck. Okay, well, we'll have to do a recap on that when you get back.
For sure.
All right, thanks, guys.
If you like what you're hearing here, please take a second and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on iTunes or on your favorite podcast app. We appreciate your feedback and suggestions for topics you'd like discussed or questions you want answered on the podcast. You can reach out on Facebook or Instagram or send us an email to podcast@gunworks.com. Also, be sure and check out our full offering of long-range gear at gunworks.com. Use promo code LRP for free shipping on any order.